Hi, I'm Jack, and welcome back because just before the movie comes out everywhere, I finally got to see this movie early. It is my most anticipated movie of the year, and I got to see a fan screening for none other than The Batman. Don't mind my Batman voice, that was just an attempt. But anyway, before we get started, don't forget to follow me on social media. My username is down below at the bottom of the screen and in the description below, so don't forget to do that while you're at it. And this is a spoiler-free review. I do plan on making a spoiler review of this movie soon. So if you haven't seen the movie yet, you are absolutely safe here. And with that said, let's get started. Set in his second year of crime fighting in Gotham City, the film follows Batman on a trail trying to find a mysterious serial killer known as the Riddler while also coming into contact with Selina Kyle and more. Like I mentioned earlier in my review, this was my most anticipated movie of the year. Batman is one of my all-time favorite comic book characters, and I really like Robert Pattinson as an actor. I really liked Tenet. I love The Lighthouse. I really liked Good Time and some of the other stuff he's done. So I was, of course, naturally really excited to see what he's going to bring as the Dark Knight himself. And I really like what I've saw from the trailers, from what Matt Reeves has shown us, to how Gotham looks, and with the characters and the actors who are portraying them. So naturally, I was very excited for this movie. And I was so excited to finally see this movie last night. And it lived up to the hype. I absolutely loved this movie. It reached my expectations and even surpassed them. It was such a great movie. Not just a great movie in general, but it's also just a terrific Batman movie. It just does all the things that a Batman movie would have, and it's done right. And kicking off the positives, I thought the acting was fabulous. I loved Robert Pattinson as Batman. He might be my new favorite live-action Batman. I do love Christian Bale, and I really like Ben Affleck and Adam West and Michael Keaton in them. But Robert Pattinson was so good in this role. Like, he might be my new favorite Batman in terms of live action. He was fantastic. I loved his scenes with all the other characters, from Catwoman to Riddler to Jim Gordon to the Penguin. He was amazing. Robert Pattinson truly embodies this role, whether he was as Bruce Wayne or as the Batman. And I loved the Batman voice he had. I loved just everything about it. I loved. He truly embodied this role fabulously. And Zoë Kravitz is also marvelous as Selina Kyle, aka Catwoman. I did really like Anne Hathaway, but I always felt like Michelle Pfeiffer was my personal favorite Catwoman. Zoë Kravitz might be up there with Michelle Pfeiffer. I don't know who my favorite is, but Zoë Kravitz I think was great. She had great moments with Robert Pattinson's Batman, and she had this nice energy and presence on screen. She was really great. There's some really cool sequences that happen with her character, and I just love the dynamic she had with Robert Pattinson in this movie. It was really great. Probably one of the best on-screen dynamics of Batman and Catwoman. I really enjoyed her in this movie. And just to get this out of the way, Jeffrey Wright is probably one of the best Jim Gordons we've had. My favorite Jim Gordon is Gary Oldman from the Dark Knight trilogy, and I also loved Ben McKenzie from Gotham, the TV show. I love Jeffrey Wright here. There are so many scenes with him and Batman trying to solve all of these riddles, and they're trying to look at all of these investigations. And I love the dynamic he and Batman have in this movie. We get to see them work together. That was cool, and I really like Jeffrey in this movie. There are some funny moments here and there, and it's not overly reliant on humor, but that's a good thing with this kind of movie. And I just really liked Jeffrey Wright as his character. I thought he was great. Colin Farrell was in the movie a lot more than I expected he would, and I actually thought he was actually pretty funny. He's probably one of the more funnier characters, even though, again, it's not a humorous movie, because of what was marketed, but it made sense. But he was so good in this role. I just cannot imagine just the how much hard work the makeup team put on him when it comes to prosthetics because it looked fantastic. I was just blown away. I was like, I can't believe this is Colin Farrell right here. And he was really great as Oswald Cobblepot, just seeing a younger version of that character before he becomes the Penguin that we all know in DC media. I really enjoyed him here. And Paul Dano as the Riddler, one of the best on-screen live-action Batman villains we've had. He is menacing. He's terrifying. I did have fun with Jim Carrey's Riddler from Batman Forever, and I do love Gotham's Riddler. This is the most terrifying Riddler I've ever seen. Like, I genuinely get scared whenever he's on screen. It's like there's a riddle or something. It's just, Paul Dano was so good. He was menacing. His score, like his theme, is very chilling, and he was just fabulous. I really loved Paul Dano on Prisoners, and he is so great here. He's one of the best DC film villains and just live action on screen Batman villains we've ever had. And Andy Serkis, I thought, was great as Alfred. I wish we got more of him, but for what we had with him, I really dug him. He was very underrated in this movie. He was really great in this movie. I love the dynamic he had with Robert Pattinson's Bruce Wayne, and just seeing him deal with how in this movie Bruce spends so much of his time wanting to be Batman. And you see how Alfred is trying to just help him and just deal with this journey that he's on. I really enjoyed him here. Just all in all, I thought the cast is really great, especially the side characters. Everybody just brought their A game onto this movie. Michael Giacchino composed the score of this movie, and he did Spider-Man No Way Home, some of the recent Star Trek movies, and The Incredibles. This is one of his best scores he's ever delivered. I loved it. Felt very haunting, and it reminds me of some of the Danny Elfman's tracks for Batman the Animated Series in a way, because even how Gotham looks reminds me of that show. And I really liked a lot of the tracks here. The Batman theme is great. The Catwoman theme is also really great. And the Riddler theme is it's perfect. I love a lot of the tracks we got here. It perfectly fits the mood and just the setting and the situation with what's happening with Batman and all of these characters in Gotham City. Really, really great stuff. I love his score. It's one of my all-time favorites from him. The action sequences are really great. This movie has a lot of great stuff. It reminds me of the Arkham video games with how Batman is able to do the multi-fear takedown, where he's able to take down 5 guys in kind of back-to-back. There are some really cool action sequences here when we have them. There's not as much of them, but when we do get action sequences, they are awesome. In terms of how they were shot, the choreography, we get to see Batman utilize different fighting styles and just see him use any of his gadgets when he's in combat here. And I thought they were really good, especially with how the camera work, how it was shot. It was really well done. And again, like I said, not as much of it here because this is a much more detective noir driven film. But when we have action sequences, they are really cool. And like I added when I said detective noir story, this is a very detective noir heavy Batman film. It is truly unlike anything we've ever seen beforehand. It's very different from the Dark Knight trilogy and even Batman 89 all the way to Batman Robin. This is a very different kind of Batman movie because this is a very detective heavy story. And it was phenomenal at that. I love seeing Batman as this detective. Like, we're seeing him solve all these riddles and to solve these mysteries and these clues revolving around the Riddler and all the killings he's committed throughout the city. And we see Batman utilize all of his technology, his intellect, and helping Gordon and the GCPD. I love seeing him just be a master detective here, because one of the things I do like about some Batman in general is him being a detective. And I feel like with the movies, they haven't utilized as much of it until now. If you are somebody who loves detective movies or stuff involving that kind of area, this movie has a lot of it, and it is done so well. It reminds me of like a film noir genre movie, and it is just really cool to see Batman utilize his intellect and his gadgets and all of the things that make him the world's greatest detective here. It is a 3 hour movie, almost around 2 hours and 55 minutes, but it felt well paced to me. There can be a few moments where maybe you could have tweaked a few scenes, but that did not bother me. I thought it's a very well paced movie. I was hooked from the start of this movie all the way till the end because I was loving what was happening with this movie in terms of story and characters and all of that. I thought it was just really cool stuff. I never felt like a moment was getting dull. It just feels very exciting. I was interested, I was engaged all the way till the end. Greg Fraser did the cinematography of the Batman, and he also did Dune last year, and so as The Mandalorian, I think. And once again, his cinematography is so good. We got so many great shots when it comes to Batman looking over the city, or maybe shots of the bat signal lighting up in the sky and just all that stuff. Really, we got some really great cinematography work here. And it's also elevated because in terms of technology, they actually used what they used in Mandalorian, where I don't recall the full name of it, ILM Stagecraft, where the background is actually virtual, but it looks so real. They use that here in a lot of the scenes of Batman on a rooftop, and I think they looked awesome. They felt very real and convincing that Batman is up on a rooftop at this time at night, and I just really dug how this film looks. It's a very good looking comic book movie, and I think I would love to see more movies in the genre utilize that kind of technology that this movie used because it looks really great. Matt Reeves was very inspired by movies like Seven and Zodiac and Chinatown, and I can clearly see those connections with this movie because this is a very realistic and gritty kind of Batman film that is very focused on the detective side of things. And having seen a movie like Seven, I could see the connection, and I absolutely love that. One of the things this movie does, probably better than any of the live action Batman movies, is it really explores the mental state of Batman. We get to see how mentally Batman's like all he wants to do with his time is be Batman. He doesn't spend a lot of time as Bruce Wayne, and how it impacts him mentally and physically, and we see how it affects him and just how far he's willing to go to save Gotham City and to catch the Riddler who's trying to kill all these corrupt people in Gotham. And not only that too, but he feels very much like a Jigsaw and a lot of these killers mashed as one. And it is a gritty movie to the point where I could almost see this being R-rated. There are some moments could be just a tad bit more violent, and then I could see this movie being R-rated because there are some really dark stuff, and some of the ways Riddler kills his victims are horrifying. It is not quite the Batman movie for kids. So if you're hoping for something like that, you're not really going to find it here. But if you do take them to see this movie, be cautious because there is some dark, very gritty stuff in this movie, especially with how Gotham's depicted, how Batman brutally beats his enemies and all of that. And I just love how it's detective driven. And this movie really takes that to the next level more than any other movie thus far. And with how Robert Pattinson channels the character of Bruce Wayne in Batman, with how he spends more time as Batman, and you explore his mental state as this person, how he's willing to do this every night to the point where maybe he dies trying. And I love that a lot. There's so many things here that are just, that screams pure Batman, and I am absolutely here for it. And I loved the mystery of the movie. I loved how they handled and the explanations of Riddler's motivations for why he's on a killing spree. I loved how the Wayne's past comes into focus and how Bruce ties into all this. And I loved Carmine Falcone and how he tied in this with Catwoman. Everything is tied together so nicely in this story. And another thing I also want to say is that one of the things that I feel like Batman movies do a lot of is that the villains tend to outshine Batman himself. Batman 89 had that scenario. Batman Returns had that. Batman Forever kind of had that. Even The Dark Knight, which I love, 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 love to death, also had that with Heath Ledger's Joker. But this movie, the focus here, it truly focuses on Batman himself. While Riddler is awesome, the Penguin is great, and all these other characters are great, they all help serve the story that is led and told and followed through Batman himself. And I love that, and I want more Batman movies in the future to do that, because I do love the rogues of Batman, but I do want to make sure that I just want these movies to actually have the focus placed more on Batman and make sure all these villains and all these characters help service Batman in a Batman story. Because while I love a lot of the Batman movies that we got before this, they always tend to have Batman be outshined by the villains. And in this movie, Batman is the true focus here. Gotham City, I love how it looks. It feels very dark, gothic, and it gave me like kind of a dark atmosphere, which is good for a city like Gotham. It's not some happy rainbows all over the sky or anything like that. No, it is a dark city. It is not a fun place to be, and I most certainly would not want to go to Gotham City if that was real. But I love how Matt Reeves was able to make this Gotham different from what we saw before. It felt like this dark city that would definitely have so much crime, and it was really showcased here because there is a lot of Batman going around in this city in different corners, taking down the bad guys and solving murder cases and all that stuff. It is just very much a city I would not want to go to, and it fits the bill for something like Batman. And it truly is probably one of the best interpretations of Gotham. It even reminds me of Batman the Animated Series, with how that Gotham City is pretty not a fun place to be. It's very much full of crime and darkness, and this movie had all of that, and especially with how the locations they filmed this in, like they filmed some of this in Liverpool, New York City, and all that, and how they were able to create a very different and unique version of Gotham City, I think was awesome. It is just one of the best looks of Gotham City we've had in DC media, alongside the Tim Burton Batman movies, Batman the Animated Series, and even Batman Begins. And in terms of directing, Matt Reeves is the perfect choice for this movie. I loved Cloverfield, and I was really excited to see what he's going to bring with this movie. And ever since DC Fandom 2 years ago, before the very first trailer dropped and he was talking about the character and all that, I was immediately sold on him making a Batman movie. And he delivered 100%. He really understood this character of Batman and what makes him and Bruce just connect, and what made Bruce Wayne and Batman just stand out as comic book characters. And it really highlights the psyche that they both have in terms of how they function, and how we see this Batman who he spends more time as Batman. All he wants to do is go out and strike fear at the heart of criminals. And I loved how he understood that, because this movie, how people refer to him as vengeance and all that, this movie, he was able to make this version of Batman feel like this one would definitely make criminals scared to be out at night, because this Batman is truly one of the best iterations of this character I've seen in recent years. And just how he made all these characters work. I loved how he handled Catwoman, and how he delivered his interpretation of the Riddler, and how he just develops this world of Gotham City in this film. And especially with how it ends, by the end of the movie, it felt like I really liked how he handled these characters in this movie. I would not change a single thing about what Matt Reeves has created with these versions of Batman and these characters. He truly delivered 100% a spectacular job when it comes to directing this film. And with the story, he told a lot of great stories that are in this movie, and they are all done very well here. They never felt like they were out of place, despite how many there could be. Matt Reeves truly delivered one of the best Batman movies ever. And I am so excited to see what he has planned for his Batman universe he wants to make with a Penguin show that's being made. And after this movie, I can't wait to see that. And a Gotham City Police Department show he also wants to make that is set in the first year of Batman being Batman, and even more. And I cannot wait to see a sequel to this movie because he does want to make a trilogy. And after this movie, I am 100% sold. I am so excited and ready to see all the things Matt wants to do with the character, because this is just fantastic stuff. I love this movie. I'm going to go see it again. I love it so much. And without a doubt, I am going to give the Batman an A+. And I highly recommend you go see this movie on the big screen. Thank you so much to AMC for letting me go see this movie early with the fan screening. That was a whole lot of fun. Just to see, this is my first live action Batman movie I got to see on the big screen. I really enjoyed seeing it on the big screen in IMAX, and I cannot wait for you guys to go see this movie. It comes out everywhere on March 4th, and you could see select showings of it the night before. So I cannot wait for you guys to see this movie. I hope you guys enjoy it. And I am planning to do a spoiler review. So in that video, I am going to go into spoiler details with specific events and specific character moments that happen throughout this movie that I cannot wait to discuss. And I will go see it again before I do so. And yes, this is neck and neck with The Dark Knight for being my all-time favorite Batman movie. Because both movies do things that I think the other does better, but they're both so good. And I love them so much that it's hard for me to say which one do I prefer right now. They're both fantastic movies that I loved so much. And they're easily like two of my favorite Batman movies ever made. So yeah, I don't know about that. Maybe my second viewing is going to solidify it. Who knows? I can't wait to see it again, and I can't wait for you guys to go experience this movie when it comes out this weekend. And thank you guys so much for watching, and don't forget to hit that like button and the subscribe button, and stay tuned for more. Forgive my Batman voice, it probably isn't that great, but I just want to try it because it's the Batman video, you know? Anyway, thank you guys so much for watching, and don't forget to hit the like and subscribe button. Stay tuned for more.
You're part of this too. How am I part of it? You'll see.